Some Ford engines will run past 300,000 miles without ever being opened up. Others are famous in every repair shop in the country for the exact same failure at the exact same mileage every single time. I have torn apart, rebuilt, and diagnosed Ford engines for over 15 years, and today I am ranking every major Ford engine from the most bulletproof design they have ever built down to the one that gives Ford technicians nightmares. Number 1 on the reliable list is an engine so tough that police departments ran it for 200,000 miles with barely a tune-up. And the worst engine on this list has a failure so predictable that entire aftermarket industries exist just to fix Ford's mistake. Let's get into it. Starting at the top, the most reliable engine Ford has ever produced is the 4.9-liter inline-six, commonly known as the 300 straight six. This engine ran in Ford trucks from the mid-1960s all the way through 1996, and it earned a reputation as one of the toughest engines in automotive history. The design is almost stupidly simple. It's a cast iron block, cast iron head, low compression, and a bottom end built like a tank. Because it's an inline-six instead of a V configuration, the engine runs with almost no vibration, which reduces stress on every internal component. I've seen these engines pass 300,000 miles on original internals with nothing more than regular oil changes and basic maintenance. There's no timing belt to worry about, no complex variable valve timing, and no turbo to fail. The carburetor and early fuel injection systems are simple enough that a shade tree mechanic can diagnose and fix almost any issue with basic tools. The only real weakness is that it's not powerful by modern standards, but for pure longevity, nothing else on this list touches it. Right behind it is the 7.3-liter Powerstroke diesel, built from 1994 to 2003. Ford enthusiasts call this one Old Faithful, and for good reason. This is a mechanically injected diesel with no complicated emissions equipment choking it down. The block is massive and overbuilt, the internal components are heavy-duty, and the design tolerances leave plenty of margin for wear. I have personally worked on 7.3 Powerstrokes with over 400,000 miles that were still running strong on the original head gaskets. The HEUI injection system can develop issues with the high-pressure oil pump over time, but that is a known, inexpensive fix compared to what you will see later on this list. Because it predates modern emissions requirements, there is no EGR cooler to clog and no complex sensor network to fail. If you find a clean 7.3 Powerstroke, you are looking at an engine that can realistically outlive the truck it is bolted into. Third on the reliability list is the 4.6-liter 2-valve Modular V8, especially the version used in the Panther platform, which includes the Crown Victoria, Grand Marquis, and Town Car. Police departments across the country ran these engines as taxis and patrol vehicles, often idling for hours a day and then driving hard. I've seen countless examples cross 250,000 miles with nothing more than routine maintenance. The 2-valve design is simpler than the later 3-valve version, which matters a lot for reliability. There are no spark plug ejection problems, which plague the 3-valve engines we'll cover later. The timing chains are durable, the cooling system is straightforward, and the overall design philosophy prioritizes durability over outright power. The cast iron block on this engine also holds up better to long-term heat cycling than the aluminum blocks used in later performance-oriented modular variants, which matters when you're talking about a vehicle that might sit idling for hours at a stretch day after day for years. This engine proves that sometimes less complexity really does mean fewer things that can break. Moving into modern engines, the Generation 3 Coyote 5.0-liter V8, used from 2018 onward in the Mustang and F-150, earns a strong reliability ranking. Ford addressed the cam phaser issues that plagued the earlier Coyote generations and improved the oiling system for better lubrication under high RPM use. I've seen these engines handle daily driving and spirited use without the ticking noise complaints that were common on the first generation. The direct injection system is paired with port injection on this generation, which helps reduce carbon buildup on the intake valves, a problem that hurts engines that use only direct injection. Timing chains are properly sized for the application, and the aluminum block, while requiring more careful cooling system maintenance than cast iron, has proven durable when maintained on schedule. For a modern, naturally aspirated V8, this is about as good as it gets from Ford right now. The 2.7-liter EcoBoost V6 deserves recognition as one of Ford's most surprisingly durable turbocharged engines. Despite its smaller displacement, this engine uses a compacted graphite iron block, the same material used in heavy-duty diesel engines, which gives it exceptional strength for its size. I have seen these engines handle towing duty in the F-150 without the transmission and engine overheating issues that plague some of Ford's other turbocharged applications. The twin-turbo setup is well matched to the engine's capabilities rather than being pushed to its absolute limit, which reduces stress on the turbochargers themselves. The forged steel crankshaft and reinforced main bearing caps add durability margin that you do not always see in engines this size, and Ford's decision to use port and direct injection together, similar to what they later brought to the Gen 3 Coyote, helps keep the intake valves cleaner over the long run compared to direct injection-only competitors. Reports of major internal failures on this engine are rare compared to Ford's other EcoBoost offerings, making it a genuine standout in the turbocharged category. If you are finding this ranking helpful, go ahead and hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed, because we are about to get into the engines that separate the good Fords from the ones you want to avoid. The 6.2-liter V8 used in the Raptor and heavy-duty Super Duty trucks ranks solidly in the reliable category, though it comes with trade-offs. This engine is naturally aspirated, which immediately removes turbocharger failure from the list of concerns. The block and internals are built for heavy commercial use, and I have seen these engines handle years of work truck duty without major issues. The main downside is not reliability, it is fuel economy, since this engine drinks gas at a rate that makes the EcoBoost alternatives look efficient by comparison. But if raw mechanical simplicity and durability under load are what you are after, the 6.2 delivers exactly that. The first-generation Coyote 5.0-liter, built from 2011 to 2017, sits in the middle of this ranking. This is a good engine overall, but it has a well-documented weakness with the timing chain tensioners and cam phasers, particularly in early production years. When the phasers wear, you get a rattling noise on cold start that can eventually lead to timing chain skip if left unaddressed. I have replaced more than a few sets of phasers on these engines, and the repair typically runs between $1,500 and $2,500 depending on labor rates. Ford did issue updated parts partway through this engine's production run, so later examples within this generation are noticeably more reliable than the earliest ones. If you're looking at a used vehicle with this engine, checking the build date and confirming whether the updated phasers were installed matters significantly. The 3.5-liter EcoBoost V6 found in the F-150, Explorer, and several other Ford models is a genuinely capable engine that suffers from complexity-related reliability concerns. The twin-turbo setup provides strong power and torque, but it also means 2 turbochargers, an intercooler system, and significantly more heat that the engine has to manage compared to a naturally aspirated design. I have seen these engines develop carbon buildup on the intake valves because of the direct injection system, which requires periodic walnut blasting or induction service to correct. Cam phaser rattle on cold start is also a known issue on certain model years, similar to the early Coyote problem. When properly maintained with on-time oil changes using the correct synthetic oil, this engine can be reliable, but it demands more attention than the naturally aspirated options higher on this list. The 6.7-liter Powerstroke diesel, Ford's current heavy-duty diesel offering, represents a mixed bag for reliability. On one hand, Ford completely redesigned this engine from the ground up rather than modifying an existing block, which eliminated many of the structural weaknesses that plagued its diesel predecessors. The reverse flow layout with exhaust routed through the valley of the block rather than the outside of the heads was specifically designed to reduce heat soak and improve durability compared to earlier Powerstroke designs. On the other hand, modern emissions requirements mean this engine carries a complex aftertreatment system, including a diesel particulate filter, selective catalytic reduction system, and extensive sensor network. When these emissions components fail, and they do fail, repairs can run into the thousands of dollars. I've seen turbocharger actuator problems and EGR cooler issues on higher mileage examples, along with occasional injector failures that are far more expensive to diagnose and replace than on older mechanical diesel designs. The core engine itself is strong, but the surrounding emissions equipment brings down its overall reliability ranking compared to older, simpler diesel designs. The 3.7-liter Cyclone V6 used in the Mustang, Explorer, and F-150 during the early 2010s lands right around the middle of this ranking. It's not an engine that generates much excitement, but it's also not one that generates many complaints. The variable camshaft timing system and coil-on-plug ignition are both proven, straightforward designs that don't introduce the kind of chronic weak points you see on more complex engines. I've seen these run well past 150,000 miles with nothing more than standard maintenance. The main criticism isn't reliability, it's that Ford eventually phased this engine out in favor of turbocharged EcoBoost options that produce similar power from smaller displacement, which tells you Ford's engineering focus was shifting, even though the 3.7-liter engine itself never gave them a reputation problem. The 6.4-liter Powerstroke diesel, produced only from 2008 to 2010 as a stopgap between the troubled 6.0 and the redesigned 6.7, is another engine that struggled with reliability, though for different reasons than its predecessor. This engine used a twin-turbo sequential setup and a diesel particulate filter system that was still relatively new technology for Ford at the time. I've seen these engines suffer from EGR cooler issues similar to the 6.0, along with problems related to the emission system causing fuel dilution of the engine oil, which accelerates internal wear if oil changes aren't kept on a tighter schedule than the factory recommendation. The turbochargers on this engine are also known to develop issues earlier than you would expect from a modern diesel. Ford only built this engine for 3 model years before replacing it entirely, which tells you a lot about how satisfied Ford itself was with the design. The 4.0-liter single overhead cam V6 used in the Explorer and Ranger during the 2000s sits below average on this list. This engine has a well-known weakness with its exhaust manifold studs, which frequently break due to heat cycling, leading to exhaust leaks and difficult repairs because of limited access. I've spent hours on jobs that should have taken 30 minutes simply because of how the manifold studs are positioned. Timing chain guides on this engine are made from a plastic material that becomes brittle with age and heat exposure, eventually breaking and allowing chains slap. While the core bottom end of this engine is reasonably durable, these two chronic issues mean owners typically face repair bills well before the engine reaches the mileage you'd expect from a genuinely reliable design. The 2-liter EcoBoost used in the Escape, Fusion, and Focus during the early 2010s ranks poorly due to a specific and well-documented problem. Early versions of this engine suffered from coolant intrusion issues related to the cylinder head design, where coolant could leak into the combustion chamber or mix with the oil. This led to engine damage, white smoke from the exhaust, and in some cases, complete engine failure. Ford issued extended warranties and eventually redesigned components to address the problem. But if you're looking at an early production example of this engine, this coolant intrusion issue is something you absolutely need to verify has been addressed before buying. We're getting into the worst engines on this list now, so if you want to know exactly which used Fords to avoid, keep watching because these next two have caused more warranty claims and shop visits than almost anything else Ford has built. Just above the very worst offenders sits the 1.6-liter EcoBoost, used in the Escape, Fusion, and Focus during the mid-2010s. This engine developed a serious and well-publicized problem where the timing belt, which Ford unusually located inside the oil pan and running in oil, rather than as a conventional external accessory belt, could degrade and shed material into the oil pan. In more serious cases, oil starvation or overheating from a coolant leak into the crankcase led to engine fires, which prompted Ford to issue recalls covering hundreds of thousands of vehicles. I've inspected several of these engines where the EN oil timing belt design created exactly the kind of maintenance blind spot you'd expect, since most owners and even some shops don't think to inspect a timing belt that lives inside the engine rather than under a cover on the outside. Ford's recall remedy involved software updates and, in some cases, engine replacement, But the underlying design concept of running a rubber belt submerged in hot oil remains one of the more questionable engineering decisions in this entire lineup. Near the bottom sits the 5.4-liter 3-valve Triton V8, used extensively in F-150 trucks and expeditions during the mid-2000s. This engine has a notorious and specific failure mode. The spark plugs can literally eject from the cylinder head. The design uses two-piece spark plugs with a shorter threaded section, and over time, carbon buildup around the threads combined with heat cycling causes the plug to work loose and blow out under compression, sometimes taking threads from the head with it. I've personally dealt with this exact failure more times than I can count, and the repair requires a specialized thread repair kit or, in severe cases, cylinder head replacement. On top of the spark plug issue, this engine also suffers from cam phaser problems that cause a rattling noise on startup, similar to issues on other Ford engines but occurring more frequently and at lower mileage. Between these two chronic problems, the 5.43 valve earns its reputation as one of the more troublesome engines Ford has produced in the modern era. That brings us to the worst engine on this entire list, the 6.0-liter Powerstroke diesel, produced from 2003 to 2007. This engine is infamous in the diesel community, and for good reason. The head gaskets on this engine are chronically undersized for the cylinder pressures the engine produces, leading to frequent head gasket failures, often accompanied by cracked cylinder heads. I've replaced head gaskets on these trucks with barely 60,000 miles on the odometer, an unacceptably low number for a diesel engine that should be good for hundreds of thousands of miles. The exhaust gas recirculation cooler on this engine is another chronic failure point, prone to cracking internally and allowing coolant to enter the combustion chamber or exhaust system. When the exhaust gas recirculation cooler fails, it often takes the head gaskets with it, compounding the repair costs significantly. The oil cooler is positioned in a location that makes it prone to clogging, which then restricts oil flow to the turbocharger and can cause turbo failure. The fuel injection control module, known as the FICM, is also a common failure point, causing hard starting or a complete no-start condition. Between the head gaskets, exhaust gas recirculation cooler, oil cooler, and the FICM, this engine has so many chronic weak points that an entire industry of aftermarket fixes exists specifically to address 6.0 Powerstroke reliability, including upgraded head studs, improved exhaust gas recirculation coolers, and larger oil coolers designed to correct Ford's original engineering shortfalls. If you're shopping for a used Super Duty from this era, finding one that's already had these known fixes performed is essential because an unmodified 6.0 Powerstroke is one of the most expensive engines on the used market to own long-term. I've talked to Super Duty owners who spent more on cumulative repairs to their 6.0 than they originally paid for the truck, which is about as damning a statistic as you can find for any engine on this list. It's a genuine shame too, because when a properly upgraded 6.0 is running right, it can produce strong power and reasonable fuel economy for a diesel of its era. The problem was never the engine's potential. It was Ford rushing emissions-compliant technology into production before it had been fully developed and tested for long-term durability. So there you have it, every major Ford engine ranked, from the inline-six that refuses to die, down to the diesel that's cost owners more in repairs than almost anything else Ford has ever built. If you own one of the engines near the top of this list, you've got a genuinely solid piece of machinery under the hood. If you own one of the engines near the bottom, staying ahead of the known failure points with proactive maintenance and, where applicable, aftermarket fixes will save you thousands of dollars down the road. Drop a comment below and let me know which engine you're running and whether your experience matches this ranking. If this video helped you understand what's under your hood a little better, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with another Ford owner who needs to see it. I'll see you in the next one.